So often students struggle with identifying how to narrow down or kind of make their paper specific enough for this type of paper. Sometimes students will find a topic, a disorder, or a construct they're interested in, but can't figure out how to make it into a thesis. So I often use this framework that I'm about to present to you when I have the individual meetings after students have prepared or proposed the topic, but I thought it might actually be helpful for you to hear before you submit your formal topic proposals, and it might help you in planning. So there's two different ways that I think are useful for structuring their paper. The first is predictors of X. So X is going to be whatever topic it is you're interested in. And then the second one is the outcomes of X. And so if you have a topic, I suggest you think about whether you might want to focus on the predictors of that topic, or if you might want to think about the outcomes. You can't really do both in a paper that needs to be a persuasive paper and have a thesis. But if you pick one, you can end up with a really great paper and a thesis that kind of fits, and you have a cohesive argument. So if you want to look at predictors, we're thinking about, okay, I have a topic I'm interested in, and I want to know what factors predict it. So very commonly students are interested in disorders, but they don't know what about the disorder they want to study. So one way to approach this is thinking about, okay, what factors contribute to or predict disorders? So maybe I'm interested in ADHD. I might say, okay, I want to look at the factors that predict ADHD. I'm going to look at the role of genetics in ADHD. I'm going to look at the role of diet in the development of ADHD, and I'm going to look at the school environment and how that influences ADHD. And my thesis might be something like ADHD is the result of both biological influences as well as social and environmental factors. And in my paper, I'm going to describe each one of those three predictors and relate it back to the development of ADHD. Similarly, maybe I'm interested in language development. And so my thesis might be something like there are a number of environmental factors that predict the development of language. And so my predictors might be the amount of infant-directed speech children get, the amount of exposure to TV they have, and maybe the role of siblings in development of language. And so again, I have that coherent thesis of my thesis is these environmental things predict language development, and here exactly are these environmental things. And I have kind of natural sections that I can break my paper into. The other approach is looking at the outcomes or the effects of the topics you're interested in. So instead of talking about multiple predictors that lead to one outcome, we're looking at it kind of in the opposite direction, and we're going to talk about one predictor and several different outcomes. So let's stick with the ADHD example. Again, I'm interested in ADHD. Instead of looking at what factors predict ADHD, I'm going to talk about the outcomes of ADHD. And so maybe my thesis is ADHD has negative effects on social relationships at home and school. And I'm going to talk about how ADHD influences social relationships with peers, how it influences relationships with teachers, and how it influences relationship with parents. And those all kind of fit into my umbrella thesis that ADHD has negative effects on relationships. Just another example, maybe I want to look at executive functioning. Okay, and so maybe I'm going to have a thesis that says strong executive function skills can have positive impacts on children's lives. And I'm going to talk about how executive function improves academics, how it improves social skills, and how it improves emotion regulation. So this is the other way. You take one predictor and you talk about all the outcomes of it. Either one of these approaches can work, but this gives you a way to have kind of a topic that you're interested in, or go from a topic that you're interested in into something that you can make a great thesis about. This is kind of a general layout of the paper. This is a style that has worked really well for my students in the past. So be thinking about this as you're planning your paper. So generally you want to start with your thesis or the main argument, and then have 2 or 3 supporting arguments. So these are pieces of your arguments that feed into your thesis. Okay, so they all tie in. Each one links to support your thesis, just like the examples I showed you previously. In your paper, you're also going to need to have a counter argument. You don't have to have that figured out now, but it's important to start thinking about, and then you'll have a conclusion. So again, you don't have to use this framework. You don't have to have 3 specific subtopics or 3 supporting topics, but generally having multiple supporting topics and thinking about them now makes it a lot easier to write a big paper like this. Knowing what topics you want to do now can also help you with your literature search. If you know that you're looking at social relationships, doing separate searches on friendship, romantic relationships, and parent-child relationships can help you find more information than you might find if you were just searching social relationships in EBSCO. The supporting topics need to back up your thesis, so keep that in mind. So if, for example, my thesis is that shy adolescents have poorer social relationships, my supporting topics might be shy adolescents have poorer friendships, they have poorer romantic partnerships, and poorer parent-child relationships. So each one of those 3 supporting topics all link directly back to my thesis and keep tying back to that main point that I want to make, that shy adolescents have poor relationships. Again, with the counter argument, you need to have one. You don't have to commit right now, but you should be thinking about it. Your counter argument doesn't necessarily have to be the complete opposite of your thesis. It just needs to be a different perspective. So if you're looking at the negative outcomes of a disorder, the counter argument might be, but hey, there's this effective treatment that means that people don't have negative outcomes. If you're talking about environmental predictors of a disorder, maybe the counter argument is, oh, but hey, here's some evidence that it might also be genetic. Okay, so again, you don't have to decide on that now, but thinking about it now and being aware of it can help you as you're doing your literature search. So hopefully this helps as you're formulating your topic proposal, and just let me know if you have questions.